to this episode of Eureka and to the Sunset Television. Today, our topic is Clean Air, the Road Ahead. We have with us Dr. Rakesh Kumar, Director of National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, NEERI for short, in Nagpur, a constituent unit of CSIR. They are one of the earliest institutions in India to engage with questions of pollution, environmental changes, and climate change. In today's episode, largely we will be focusing on air pollution, although we will also be talking about some of the important activities this institution is embarking upon to face the upcoming challenges. So thank you for being with us this show. I mean, it's a good, wonderful opportunity. Environment is an important issue. It's a global issue and also an issue which is actually affecting each and every one of us today. Perhaps a few decades ago, it was broadly a global issue. Perhaps it was not at your doorstep, but I think today it's our doorstep. So now looking at the air pollution, which is one of the central themes that we would like to discuss in today's conversation. Can you tell us what are the major sources of air pollution in India? Because most of us think that it's industry, which is the main polluter with regard to air. What is your research finding? What is the reality that we see around?
Thank you for having me. Before I get on to the sources, I just wanted to also highlight that NEERI, before it became NEERI in 1974, it was known as Central Public Health Engineering Research Institute in 1958. And that was the focus point when water and sanitation was the major issue in our country. Yeah. But by the time we were progressing in our country, we realized that besides water and sanitation, we added also air pollution, hazardous waste. We also added climate change and things like that. So environment has become all-encompassing subject, of which I think air has become one of the major sources, which we traditionally believed primarily came from industry. Yeah. If you see the first set of rules before before our independence, British time, it was in 1905, and it was called Bengal Smoke Nuisance Act. Okay. And that was probably the first evidence of having air pollution related act. And in those days, only police was supposed to act on the air pollution related episodes or you can say nuisance. However, in current times, when we see it carefully, we realize that besides industries and those open burning, we have added many sources. Yeah. And of which very clearly we know that vehicles are another major source of pollution. We have a lot of garbage which actually gets burnt. That's another source. The third one, which is becoming very, very major, which was not earlier a major source, is construction-related activities. I see. Which was again a very, very minor source in the past. And the fourth one which is very site-specific. It is there in one city. It may not be there in another city. It's like use of diesel gensets. Use of specific fuel in certain areas. So those are specific areas which gets added. So in short, air pollution has become very complex problem to solve now compared to what we had earlier.
Very, very important point. Okay, let's look at industry subsequently. Let's look at, for example, second in your list, vehicle. What is the kind of, let's say, air pollution burden that comes from vehicle? After all, we have been implementing various standards for vehicular pollution, but is it still a major problem for us?
So in terms of overall mass of air pollutants that we see, vehicles will still not be largest, although when we put them together in a dense area, the levels become too high. I think the concern is mostly because where air pollution happens from vehicles, large population also lives, and therefore the exposure is very high. So earlier the method used was how many kilometers per liter. Now it is actually how many how much time you take to burn 1 liter when you are in traffic jam. So you are burning more fuel per unit length of the road travel, and which is what is probably creating more problem.
Okay. So basically, the traffic jams and you keeping the engine switched on even when you are parked. That's one of the major pollutant that you see.
Right.
The next in the list you are talking about is construction, which is kind of surprising for most of us, because after all, we think construction is putting up bricks and then putting cement, and then you have a building. So how does actually the activity of construction create a substantial air pollution?
So it's like this, similar to air pollution from vehicles, where we did a lot of cleanup, starting from having no standard in our country in 1994. Now we have BS6 standard for vehicles. But when we come to construction, our method of constructions have evolved to some extent, but primarily you don't see a major grand level change which is required. So the activity in major cities you will not see only for construction, but it's demolition and reconstruction.
Okay.
And that activity is very, very high. So just to give an example, earlier per capita generation of construction and demolition waste, any major city used to be in the range of about 0.5 to 1 kg per person.
Okay.
Now in certain cities, and in some period it goes as high as 15 to 16 kg per person per day.
Okay,
It's
so from
extremely
1
high.
kg to about 60 kilos, 1 to 60 times it has increased.
Yes. So that's the kind of increase. So we are demolishing a lot of roads, we are demolishing a lot of buildings, and we are rebuilding them. So that's a major source and activity which is increased, besides the new construction which happens.
Okay.
So when we say construction is not only limited to the building per se, but it's the movement of material. So when we are demolishing, we are moving the debris out. So a lot of trucks movements happen. And when we build, then a lot of other trucks bring in the material. And that's where the whole problem starts happening.
Okay. So now there are also two other important areas which is in the news. Maybe again, as you said, not all over India, but in specific pockets. One is stubble burning. In some parts, people burn the crops after harvest. That is one big challenge. The second is municipal waste. For example, perhaps let's say reactive nitrogen, which is also an important challenge for air pollution.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So stubble burning, I would call it episodic burning. In certain season and certain time and specific locations, people burn it. It's not something which is continuous all the time is happening. So yes, it has a very high impact during the period when it happens. Depending upon how the wind speed, wind direction is, it can go in any direction and it can impact us. So when we look at stubble burning related issue in our country, it is very site specific and certain seasons and certain locations. And of course, it impacts specific areas in a specific region, depending upon how the meteorology is, how the wind speed is. However, the real issue in many cities, which happens throughout the year, is related to solid waste solid waste which is collected or even not collected. So there are places where we see the garbage dumps which are put on fire. Sometimes it is done deliberately to recover metals. And there are other places where people just gather all the leaves and litters and they put it on fire, because we feel that's the best way to take care of solid waste. When the quantity was small, it was okay. But now when we have such large population living in a very limited space, and when we burn, the local area air pollution becomes extremely difficult. So besides the burning of garbage, which is very common in many cities across India, we also see that some of these sources which used to be very small, such as bakeries, where we have burning of wood for baking purposes, then crematoria where we use wood for cremation, and the third source which is becoming also very large. The size is small, but it becomes large in total, is tandoor and cooking related emissions.
I see.
And these are something which we never bothered about earlier, but now they are in a larger regions, and you will try to understand if you see it carefully that they do impact a lot. And
so
just to give you an
something
example,
like about 30%, 40% of population live in cities and towns, urbanized areas, these
Yes,
becomes important because they happen in a concentrated place, right?
absolutely, absolutely. That's true.
So one more question that I want to ask is that, let's say, for example, if one was talking about air pollution about 30 years ago or 40 years ago, people would have been talking about, let's say, sulfur, and because of that, acid rain as a major challenge.
Mhm.
So, but today with the climate change, we are also looking at other gases. So, what are the major important pollutants, which is a challenge to us in India today? What would be the, let's say, top five in the list?
So, when it comes to greenhouse gases leading to climate change, I would actually put them in different categories.
Okay.
So, like carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxide, as well as other greenhouse gases, which are CFCs and others. But the real issue in our country specifically is more to do with PM.
Okay.
I'm extremely sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So you can start
um,
from the real issue in our country. Yeah, that part.
right. The real issue in our country is primarily to do with the fossil fuel burning
Okay.
that we do and the emission related to that.
Uh-huh.
So of those, primarily I'll say fine particulate matter, which we call them PM 2.5, which are 2.5 micron and below particles, and PM 10, which is 10 micron and below particles. They are the ones actually which enter into our body when we breathe. The other set of pollutants which are of concern right now are nitrogen oxides because of high vehicular movements.
Okay.
And the third one, I'll call it carbon monoxide.
Okay.
The rest of them are in very minor quantity because our country has been able to reduce sulfur, which used to be very, very high. It used to be in the range of 2.5%.
Uh-huh.
It is now down to 15 ppm, which
Oh,
is
very, very,
extremely,
very.
extremely low value compared to international standards. So sulfur dioxide is no more an issue in our country.
Thank you. That's been a very, very interesting talk. This is where we will take a very small break. We'll take a very small break. Keep watching Eureka. After the break, we are going to talk about indoor pollution. Many of us think that the pollution is outside, but because of our modern lifestyle, pollution has entered inside our house. That's what one area that we are going to talk. And then Government of India has launched a very major program for clean air. We'll talk about it after the break. Keep watching Eureka.
क्या आप जानते हैं कि विदेशी मुद्रा प्रबंधन अधिनियम 1999 के लक्ष्य क्या हैं? आपके विकल्प हैं: ए, देश के भीतर भुगतान के प्रवाह को विनियमित करने के लिए सरकार को अधिकृत करना, बी, विदेशी प्रतिभूतियों और विनिमय से संबंधित लेन-देन पर अंकुश रखना, सी, आरबीआई को सामान्य या विशेष अनुमति देने का अधिकार देना, या डी, ऊपर दिए गए सभी विकल्प। सही जवाब है डी, ऊपर दिए गए सभी विकल्प।
Before the break, sir, we were discussing largely about atmospheric pollution due to, let's say, industry or vehicle or other sources, and particularly in urban areas, how something that we may not consider as important has also become a major challenge. Another area that people are talking about it with worry is the indoor pollution because of the various material that we use inside our house. Perhaps sometimes the inside of the house, some people claim, is more polluted than the outside. So, what's your take? What actually happens inside our home?
So primarily it is our belief that our indoors are clean, and I think it should be. And primarily it is actually clean. It is only when we don't keep our ventilation right, our indoors start becoming a difficult place to live. Primarily because we have also started using a lot of products which we were not using it earlier.
Yeah.
So earlier we would call it mainly agarbatti, dhupatti, mombatti, and some lighting that we were doing. Those were the indoor air pollutants, and in some cases where men of the house, if they are smoking, then they are creating this indoor air pollution. However, in current times, if you start looking at it, all the deodorizing compounds that we're using, disinfecting compounds that we use a lot of insecticide, such as for killing, either mosquitoes or cockroaches or anything that is there inside our house. They just remain inside our house. And in addition to that, we also have a lot of carpets which are being used in our houses. So they also emit fine particles as well as other emissions. There are some houses which have used a lot of granites, stones. They also emit something called radon, which is a natural gas, but it comes in your house because you have built the house that way. So over a period of time, if the ventilation is not right, we could be actually getting exposed to very high level of these pollutants. And of these volatile organic compounds are set of compounds which are the dominant ones, and they can actually cause a lot of problems. And if somebody is not feeling good in certain indoors, actually it means there is something wrong with the house the way it is kept.
Very, very important point, because as we were again talking about, a substantial section now lives in cities, high-rise building, maybe air conditioned, so that people think that they should keep the windows closed all the time. But perhaps it's important that now and then we actually ventilate the house so that there are no concentration left in the house. What kind of activities you would suggest to people to maintain proper ventilation within the house, particularly in urban areas where you need to keep the windows closed for most of the time?
Yes, this is a very important question that you asked. Even if your house or office spaces, we call them indoor, meaning all of these are actual places. And one of the survey which was carried out by one of our research students found out that in metro cities, people are spending almost 22 hours out of 24 hours indoors, which could be your house, office, or car. And when we look at all of these indoors, they are primarily all air conditioned. They are rarely you see that windows are open and ventilation takes place. So the first primary thing which needs to be done is that at least twice in a day, open all the windows and doors so that it has the natural ventilation. Plus, when you are making a new house, there is a norm which is available. And the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has similarly come out with an national building code for houses, where you can find out how much area of window is required for a given floor area. So if you maintain that, chances are that your house will be ventilated. Of course, provided we open the windows and the doors on a regular basis. Even if it is closed house and air conditioned, we must open it at least twice a day.
At least twice a day. That's, I think, important takeaway for many of us who are living in cities and, as you say, in office spaces. So this also applicable to office spaces, not just to home, as you pointed out. Let's move on to another important area, which is the air pollution is a challenge in India and elsewhere. And recently, the government of India has come out with this clean air program. So can you tell us about what is this program and how NEERI is spearheading it?
So National Clean Air Program, what we call it NCAP, is very ambitious program of Government of India, and we as a community should be very proud of it. So that government has taken lead in doing this exercise. Of course, it will not succeed unless until everyone participates in it. Air is not as concentrated problem as water and other solid waste related it is. In this case, what happens is more than 122 cities are already not meeting the norms of clean air. And there'll be many more cities which will keep getting added. But primarily when we see most of them, almost 80% of them are not meeting the norms for particulate matter. So fine dust or dust levels are very high. So clean air program primarily looks at least 30%, 20 to 30% reduction in next 3 years time, which is a very ambitious target. And Government of India wants to implement it through direct participation of local corporation. This is again a very, very unique method of doing it. It's not centralized. It is being, the power and funds are also being given to local corporation to take necessary steps. One more thing I just wanted to add for National Clean Air Program is it has also decided that for every corporation or the city which is coming under this umbrella of clean air, will also tie up with an educational institution or a research institution. It will be called Institution of Repute, IOR. So that, partnership with the intellectual group and the group which is implementing is very well forced, because unless until good participation is there, success is going to be limited.
Yeah. Now, coming to the specifics, let's say, for example, the target is to reduce 20 to 30% in near future, which is a big step if one thinks so. Can you illustrate it with one or two examples of how actually one can go about doing that?
So there are many methods of doing it, and as we said, the list is very long. So if you look at all sector of air pollution that we initially discussed in our conversation, there are more than 120, 130 activities which needs to be undertaken. So of these, I'll say sector-wise, one has to examine. So in transportation sector, one would talk about clean fuel, clean engine, and better transportation systems, roads, and related activities, including public transport. When it comes to urban areas, other issues, when we have very high emission from construction sites and new construction practices, good monitoring, which needs to happen, and then control all of these. But besides doing all of these activities, there are very small but significant activities which we initiated in some places, and many others are also trying to do this, can also be undertaken. So one exercise was to look at traffic junctions air pollution. Because of our traffic jams, I just said in the beginning, our air pollution levels in a very limited area goes 30 to 40 times higher, typically. So we devised a device called Vayu, which looks at addressing traffic junctions related issues, which was almost done about 3-4 years back. Piloting was done in Mumbai and then in Delhi. Now it's being done in Gurgaon and many other places.
Very interesting point. I mean, maybe I'll need to ask you for a small elaboration of this Vayu instrument. It's an outdoor air cleaning instrument, right? If you can say so.
Yes.
How does it actually work? I mean, how does it remove, filter out pollution from the atmosphere outside?
So the device has two major components. One is that it has graded filters. So as we see in our cities, we have particles of different size. So if I put a very high efficiency filter, it will get choked very quickly. If I put a very coarse filter, it will not filter anything at all. So we had to do this exercise to understand what kind of combination of filters which will work for particles are issued. Then second thing, which was very important, as I told you, that carbon monoxide and unburnt hydrocarbons, volatile organic compounds, are also very high at traffic junctions. So we needed all of these to be oxidized. So we use oxidizing catalyst and along with the activated carbon to take care of that. So these two components, and the third component that we use is when the air is being released after cleaning, it is being released in a diffused fashion, so the dilution also takes place.
I see. Okay.
So besides doing about 50% reduction directly through filtration and catalyst activation, we also have about 20-30% benefit through the dilution, and that's why this Vayu has one word A. A actually means wind augmentation. The first two letters.
Okay, very interesting part that you said. See, another important component the government is thinking in terms of reducing the air pollution is slowly shifting towards e-vehicles, right? So, can you tell us a few words about it?
So, e-vehicles were recommended way back in 2006. That was the period when the first set of studies were done for 6 cities in India for source apportionment. And source apportionment study was primarily to find out which are the sources which are contributing, the first question that you asked. And in this first landmark study, we found out that if you're looking at action plan, particularly for cities where the density of population and vehicles both are high, we have to have e-mobility, or what you call it, electric mobility, in place, because they not only are almost zero emission, but also it's easier to replace its batteries, which is now much more advanced compared to what we had 10-15 years back. There is a group of people who say that primarily it is nothing but electricity which is coming and batteries being used, and that electricity comes from burning coal in some other place. So pollution does happen.
Yeah.
But the real issue of air pollution is where the exposure happens. The exposure actually happens in cities. It doesn't happen at power plant.
Yeah.
Therefore, e-mobility is going to be the game changer for better air quality in cities as we go ahead.
Very, very interesting and very important point. So coming to the National Action Plan for Clean Air, you are pointing out that we are trying it out in about 120 cities, and then in kind of a short-term goal is in the next few years, reduce the air pollution in some of these places by about 20 to 30%. What more is part of that plan?
So Clean Air program aims at doing it fast as possible, but there are certain things which cannot happen overnight. I think that's something which everyone will have to realize it, because we have a set of people who are of different income sources, and our economy also needs to work effectively. So when I'm saying that I need to control, and we should not do any burning at all, if I do any kind of ban on that, we immediately stop many small scale industries.
Yeah.
So what is important here is to be sensitive towards these issues. We should make them aware that air pollution from such small scale industry like lime kilns, forgery, for forging activities, lime kilns. In addition to that, you have brick kilns. They are essential for our economy. So small technological intervention will be possible to clean that up. But if we simply stop it, we will have problem in future.
Very, very interesting, and thank you. I mean, it was a very informative and educative conversation. Air pollution is a big challenge. It affects our health, and in the long run, it will also affect our economy. In the sense that if we have more sick people, I mean, we are going to have a huge burden on the nation's economy. It's an important challenge. It's not very easily seen, but unlike let's say a polluted river, you can't see a polluted air that easily. It's not perceptible so easily, but a very key challenge. With your institution, with you and your colleagues, the government of India has come out with this great plan for clean air. We all wish that this program becomes success, and maybe we all should also play our own part in this. Thank you for being in the show and sharing all this thought with us. Keep watching Eureka. We'll come back with another conversation next week, same time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.